had a chance to work together last year especially, and Shankar is leading the $100 million Catalyst Fund. That's Samsung Strategy and Innovation Center. So, and they've done quite a few investments, and Shankar definitely going to talk about that. So then Ethan Shore, who developed a very cool product. You know, everybody is like, with the exception of Pankaj, most people come with PowerPoint slides. And Ethan actually came with real product, as he's going to show. A hard piece of hardware. It's a very cool product. Actually, I ordered two, but he's going to tell you what it is. I'm hoping to get it from my kids. How many of you have little kids who hate brushing their teeth? Okay, all right. So this product is for you. Well, you already know Pankaj. And finally, Douglas Sellers, who is a co-founder and CTO of a company called Kumu, who recently changed their name from Uptick, which is a very cool company that combines data from wearable fitness trackers to personal trainers. With that, I wanted to kind of let each of you introduce yourself, maybe talk a little bit about your kind of take on wearables. And during your introduction, I think we're going to go and show the video. Want to start with the video?
No, yeah. Well, I can. No. So let me do this. Maybe I can just say a few words and then we could.
Perfect.
On that.
Perfect.
So I should probably start with the customary commercial with Samsung Electronics, who we are, etc. Most of you know the brand Samsung. Most of you use Samsung as a product, whether it's a cell phone or a television. Some of us, we are a pretty large company. In fact, we are, if not the largest technology company by revenue, one of the largest. Last year we did about $190 billion in revenue. And we have 9 business units, and each of those business units happens to be either a market share leader or in the top 3 in that category. It really started about 30 years ago when the company, for the first time, started building dynamic random access memory chips. That's really when it started doing something high-tech. And in 30 years, it began to build a brand of its own, and the last several years have been pretty interesting for the company, getting to the scale that it's gotten to. Here is the issue. The company is a global company, but every business unit is based in Korea. And it's really hard as an entrepreneur and as a startup to figure out how to work with Samsung Electronics, right? It is really hard. So over time, what we realized as we grew as a company, that the only way we can continue to grow is to engage with the startup community and to engage with early stage disruptive ideas. And that's the only way we can keep the engine of innovation going. So we set up the Samsung Strategy and Innovation Center a couple of years ago with 3 pillars. The first pillar is building open platforms, and I'll talk a little bit about that. The second pillar is working with large companies and other ecosystem players and building corporate relationships, including corp dev. And the third pillar is what I do, which is investments. For startups, investment is the lifeblood of startups until you become profitable. And so being able to provide that and then work with startups is a really big piece. So that's the high level in terms of what I do. So early stage disruptive ideas, median investments for me, for my team, is about $2 million per investment. We've been around for 18 months. We've done 25 investments, so we do one every 2-3 weeks. That's the kind of pace. If you think about what other traditionally corporate venture capital is all about, they typically take 4, 5, 6 months, and you need a business unit to sponsor it. We are trying to get ahead of that curve, which is to go really early and make quick decisions and be transparent in our decision making, and we built a portfolio of companies. So just one quick word, and maybe we can run the video. So the topic is wearables, and so I have a little bit of a controversial statement on wearables, and it's just me having been in the investment business for 20 years. And when you're in the investment business, first of all, you should be a pathological optimist to do this, because you fail a lot. Number 2, you got to recognize patterns. And I think that's most of it, actually. And my pattern recognition is a little controversial. As I went to CES this year, as well as Mobile World Congress, when I actually saw there were well over 100 different wearable devices, I actually think we're at the top of the hype curve in this market. I think Pankaj is exactly right. A lot of these will sort out over time and use cases will develop. But I do think it is incredibly overhyped. And I think we all know what comes after a hype curve is the value of dissolution, right? And I think real businesses will get built beyond that when use cases really get traction and very interesting, useful wearables come into the market. And I think we're a few years away from that. So one of the things that we are thinking about a lot, and this is Samsung Electronics I'm talking about, we have 6 or 7 wearable watches in the market today. We have more than anybody else today in terms of number of devices. And thank you for the plug on that one. It's a really interesting device. But the interesting thing is, why wear a wearable if it can't do something truly, truly useful to you? So that is the controversial statement, and with that, we can run the video. That would be helpful.
The lights there behind you?
Well, depends. Can you guys see this? Should we move a little bit?
We can see it.
Ethan, move.
What if you could ask questions and hear answers from your heart?
Can you guys hear this in the back? Or no? Okay.
Your muscles, your skin.
Not sure why the audio is not coming out of
If this conversation happened every moment of every day, you would learn a lot. You could live a better life. You could adjust your habits according to your body's advice. You could share information with your doubt. Imagine the possibilities, the mysteries unlocked, the insights gained. You could change your life and the life of everyone you care about. What if your body had a voice?
Thank you, Roger. So
Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. I can add in the a few words here to help. So the video is called "The Voice of the Body," and think of it this way. Today, how do you do aircraft maintenance, right? So jet engines are incredibly complex machines. No one waits for those engines to fail before they start working on them, right? There are predictive algorithms, there are sensors on them, and typically when those sensors tell you that this machine needs preventative maintenance, you take it down and you get it done, right? So you don't let it fail up in the air. The human body happens to be an incredibly complex system. It's way more complex than anything that exists out there. So how do you listen to the voice of the body? How do you really understand what is going on? And if that is not the true purpose of a wearable, what is? Right? So that's the way we think about it. So many of our investments are around figuring out how do we really understand what is going on. And then if you have that kind of data, perhaps you could help us live a better lifestyle. Perhaps you could prevent or delay cardiovascular disease. Perhaps you can delay diabetes and some of the highly chronic diseases. So that's kind of, we think many of the chronic diseases are lifestyle related. So if you can help change behavior and think about lifestyle in a very different way, perhaps wearables really do make sense. Then you have real good value proposition for consumers. So that's my thought.
Just a quick question. Your Twitter, could you just tell everybody, just in case they want to tweet, what you guys are talking about? Your
Shankar C.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doug? Ethan, sorry. Your Twitter?
Oh, Grush Brush, at Grush Brush.
Got your Pankaj Kedia?
Yep.
Doug?
Douglas J. Sellers.
Okay.
And Salon until broke.
Got that.
All right.
Okay, so a lot of you guys have kids, you mentioned, and you know how difficult it is to get them to brush their teeth. So we created a solution here, and it's called the Grush. That's the gaming toothbrush. This is an IoT device that has the guts of a wearable. It's a motion sensing toothbrush. So it knows exactly where it is in the mouth when your kids are brushing. And it wirelessly connects to a mobile device so kids can play games that are fun for the kids and also instructional, so they brush right every time. And when they're done brushing, they get a score, and all this detailed information about their brushing is uploaded to the cloud, so that parents and dentists can track the kids brushing and reward them for proper brushing. So, congrats. It's in a matter of weeks we'll be launching.
How much are those?
$59 at grushgamer.com.
Cool. Well, yeah.
Hi, yeah, I work for a company now, we're called Kumu Wellness. What we really provide is we provide mobile one-to-one wellness coaching, primarily via video chat and text chat, where you get a real-life wellness coach who communicates to you on a daily basis, and it really focuses on behavior and lifestyle change. We're really kind of trying to stay out of the classic fitness trap of only making fitness products for fit people. And we really have kind of augmented our very friendly coaching pool with a lot of very sophisticated technology tools that bring in data from a variety of different sources, including any wearable that we can get our hands on, your Outlook calendar, your Instagram, your Facebook, anything that we can use to kind of build a lifestyle picture of you and understand what's going on in your life, and then allow our coaches to get information about what would help to motivate you. Motivation is really the key in this kind of a product, and we're just looking to kind of build out something that will work for everyone on an individual basis, and we think that kind of real people augmented by technology via kind of all this data that's coming in is really what's going to make this work.
Thanks. So my first question is to Shankar. So can you tell a little bit more about what Samsung is doing in wearables outside of what everybody else knows, the Galaxy Gear watches? What other aspects of wearables are you looking into?
I'll keep it at a very, very high level. Obviously, can't talk about what is being cooked up, right? But I'll think the best way to think about it is probably what my video talked about. So I think a wearable device is something that you're wearing right next to your skin, right? And so you have the ability to figure out a lot of things about you. What is your skin temperature? What is your heart rate? What is your heart rate variability? What is, what are the various things that are happening, right? Galvanic sensing response, which is, what is the electric activity, or chemical activity on your skin. By knowing a lot of these things, I think you get data sources. These are just really good, important, accurate data sources. And beyond that, the question is, what could you do? What could you do in terms of applications and services that helps you actually make use of that data? So that's really where I think the world is going. Now there's a lot of questions that need to be answered along the way. I think, first of all, it's really hard to measure what I just talked about. And something that works for me, that works for you, or someone who's much older or much younger, it is incredibly hard. We're all different skin types and different colors, et cetera, et cetera. It's just very, very hard to do. So how do you make that work? So I think a lot of effort is to do that accurately. And then once you have that accuracy, it is then about, okay, how do you deliver applications and services, just like what you're used to experiencing on a smartphone. There's so many of these, and I think Pankaj is exactly right. You just don't know which ones of these applications are gonna happen. What you do know is after 5 years of the smartphone industry, you have Uber, which is one of the most valuable companies in the Valley. And if you didn't have your smartphone, you probably wouldn't use Uber. It is just so fundamental that the sensors in your smartphone and the application that is delivered through your smartphone is so important. The infrastructure needs to come together first, and then you have great applications down the road. And we are a big company, so we can enable the Lego bricks that are needed for that to happen, and that's what we're focused on.
Excellent. And can you share a little bit what kind of types of companies in wearable tech you've been investing, and what kind of companies you're looking for?
It's really all across the board. There's a company that I'll share that both Qualcomm and Samsung together invested in. It's a semiconductor company here in the Valley. It's a company called Ineda. We invested in it together because we felt it's a company that's building an infrastructure piece that is really important. If you guys, we're all in Silicon Valley. 20 years ago, For every application, there would be 20 semiconductor companies. Today, there's typically 1 or 0, right? There's no longer Silicon Valley that way. There's not that many semiconductor companies here anymore. But we felt this company was building a low-power chip because energy consumption is just simply the most important piece here. We want these devices to last not just a day, but perhaps several days, perhaps 30 days, right? Then you have a real device that you're going to use all the time rather than charging it all the time, right? So I think that company has an interesting technology that enables it, so it's one of those. We've invested in companies that can do sensors, not just what you see today in the cell phones, GPS, et cetera, but sensors that can measure the human body. So we've invested with quite a few of those companies. So we have a pretty large portfolio. About 9 companies in our portfolio of 25 deal with digital health.
Super. All right, my next question is to Ethan. How did you come up with the Grush as a concept and as a product? What's been the driving force?
Okay, well, both I and Dr. Wong, my partner over there, were fathers, young children. We know it's very difficult to get them to brush their teeth, so I know that his child had to get some teeth replaced, which was a big dental bill. But beyond that, there hasn't been much innovation in the toothbrush space. If you look up like ancient Chinese toothbrush, you'll see one from 1,000 years ago. It looks just like the toothbrushes that you can buy in the store. So I think that this is totally new way to track the way kids are brushing their teeth, and also, we can do a lot of innovations around the hardware, which is established, this sort of wearable hardware. So for example, we have a AAA battery in here that will last for 3 months. 3 months is about the time when you need to replace the brush head, and the thing's just asleep. You pick it up, it senses the motion, it's ready to start sending out that data to control the brushing.
Very cool. And the other question I wanted to follow up with is, so kids generally have a very short attention span, and they get bored of games very quickly. So how do you keep their interest going? And
there's 2 ways to do that. I think one is making it into an interactive game. It's not just that kids see brushing as a chore and they don't like it. Some kids also, they lack the dexterity and they're not able to visualize the results. So when we can make an interactive visualization where they can see, okay, I'm killing this burger monster here, I'm brushing away this thing here, they know exactly where to brush every time. So I think that's making it fun for them. And then on the gamification side, when you have a sort of a game that is leading them along this 12-week cycle, and at the end of every week there's a treasure chest and they get a reward, whether it's a reward they've agreed on with their parents, like an allowance increase or a pizza party, or whether it's a virtual reward, like a new virtual brush sword for their brushing ninja game, or for girls if they get like a new thing for their pony that they're raising. When you motivate kids, and some people say you shouldn't, why do you have to, we prefer the carrot to the stick kind of thing. And in this year, in 2015, that's just the way it is now, and I don't see any problem with motivating kids in this way to do something healthy.
So when the kid is brushing,
Yeah.
are they watching the smartphone?
Yeah, like you have a smartphone holder on the bathroom mirror, so just put the phone in there. You can recycle a phone you're not using anymore, or I think over 50% of kids now have access to a mobile device. Just put it there, and then it's kind of turns this mirror into a screen for them.
yeah, my kids have all our old devices. I
There you
think
go.
they have, like, between the 2 of them, they have about 5 old iPads and iPhones.
When you say don't throw away your old device, you say go Grush and go green.
All right, so I'm going to go straight to Douglas and ask you about what was your concept? How did the company that used to be called Uptick create it, and why did you change the name?
Well, I mean, it originally came, we actually had we were actually founded with the idea of kind of attacking the obesity crisis in America. And we actually had another product which we had sold for a few years, that when we took a really hard look at it about 1.5 years ago, we found that we had inadvertently made a fitness product only for fit people. I don't think we had set out to do that, but just through kind of natural product iteration, that's where it had ended up. And we really weren't interested in pursuing that. We aren't interested in helping existing runners run better, which is what we ended up doing. So we really looked at kind of the data and what the product looked like, and we found that The old product also uses real-life personal trainers, which is a little different than using kind of wellness coaches, but we found that some of the personal trainers could make anyone successful. Most personal trainers had about a 5% success ratio, but some of them could have a close to 100% success ratio. So we did what I think any product organization would do. We brought them in, and we're like, what are you guys doing? And they were all doing basically exactly the same thing. They told us when they got your average person who was just looking to lose a few pounds and wasn't looking to go do a triathlon, they didn't use the product. What they did was they used the email connectivity they had with them to talk to the person and ask them about what their lifestyle was like. They asked them a lot of detailed questions about how do you live, what's your day look like. And at the end of that, they came up with some very, very small things that could get people to do it. They're the ones who really told us that, like, it doesn't matter what people are doing as long as they keep doing it. If you can get somebody to put a habit in, which takes about a month to do, they will continue to stick with it. The average time someone sticks with a gym is about 11 days. So you have to figure out how to get people over that initial hump where the first habit and the first behavior change they have is to engage with a coach and engage with someone who's going to help them. So they told us, and the anecdote that I want to say half the people they brought in used was, the first thing they do is they ask people, how many sodas are you drinking a week right now? They said the average person was drinking between 25 and 40 sodas a week. And they said, well, why don't we do this? Rather than you drinking 3 sodas a day, why don't you try to cut down to just 1 soda a day? And on the surface, that sounds so easy, where the way our old product really worked. Day one, it would give you a meal plan that was purely quinoa. And that seems impossible. To someone who's never eaten that before, never cooked that before, it seems impossible. And that's the way a lot of these exercise programs work, and a lot of these health programs work, is that they focus on day one, we're taking over your life. And instead of doing that, they just focus on giving them very small things and then turning those into actual behavior change over a few weeks, and then making it feel like they're getting someplace. And then they built that relationship with them. So we threw away the other product. We pivoted everything to, we hired some psychiatrists who came in and talked about what these people were actually doing, and they're using a technique called motivational interviewing, which we were able to then train a couple hundred wellness coaches on how to do. And then from there, it was just a matter of betaing that. That's where really the Uptick name was used, was really in the beta. And figuring out what worked and what didn't, and from a technology point of view, what data was interesting to us. What's the real value of someone getting a Fitbit to us? Is it the actual data, or is it the excitement they have of having a Fitbit? And how can you keep that going as long as possible? What other data sources are interesting that we can then use to kind of build a lifestyle profile that the machine never communicates directly with you. It's purely a way to inform this person who you have a relationship with to keep you motivated. So it was really just kind of finding our way in a very kind of traditional iterative product cycle, and being not afraid to throw away something that wasn't working for something that we really wanted to make work.
And that's also prompted the name change?
That's also prompted the name change. This is actually the third name of this product. It was originally called Elevate, which was taken by another app while we were in the original alpha period. We then used Uptick, which I don't think anyone was ever really in love with. And then we did a real kind of name search after that, and we ended up with Kumu, which is the Hawaiian word for guru, but which is also really just a nonsense word, which is a lot easier for people to kind of grasp onto.
Super. I wanted to ask a question to all of you. Traditionally, when you think of Kickstarter and Indiegogo, you think of startups and the way for them to raise money. And yet something new happened recently when Pebble went, an fairly established company, I would say, went and basically raised money for their new product on Kickstarter. Do you guys see then quite a few? I mean, they raised $15 million, right? So the most successful campaign. So do you guys think it's like a new trend where established companies going to start going to Kickstarter and Indiegogo and raise money? Do you think it's a one-off? What do you all think about that?
So my personal view is several years ago, the kind of phenomenon that started happening with software is beginning to happen in hardware in general, right? Which is going back to my Lego bricks analogy. I think when you have Lego bricks available for companies to quickly put together a product, prototype it, perhaps shoot a few videos and get it up there on Kickstarter, and then have a slick campaign that you can shoot for really almost nothing, right? And get it up there and do a pitch, and then raise millions of dollars. I think it's because those capabilities are available. And if it's available, why wouldn't you take it? It's the best money you can take.
Right.
I've always advised companies, for as long as I've been a venture investor, venture capital money should be your last resort, because with that comes a lot of things. It's not, you have to, because your venture capital investor is looking for a big return, and when that big return is the motivation, then it's going to go in a certain direction. However, if there's easy money available and the Lego bricks of actually building something with a very small amount of capital, and it's basically giving you working capital to go build that product well before you need to raise more expensive money like venture capital, I think it's a really strong thing, and I think it's right here. I think the maker phenomenon, the maker movement, the Indiegogo and Kickstarter pieces, and if you go to Maker Fair is coming up in a few weeks, actually in a couple of months, in May,
Right.
I think, and I've been going there for years. Well, if you've seen what has changed over time, the ability for not just hobbyists to build something, but companies to actually do something before they have to raise expensive money, I think the time is right here.
Anybody else wants to comment on this?
Yeah, what I would say is, you call Pebble established. Not really, right? The wearable space is very new. First in, yes, wearable was one of the first ones to start talking about it 2 years ago. But where the space is going, if you take a 10-year view, we are very early. So it makes a lot of sense for Pebble to do what they did. And then Shankar talked about hype and so on. There is genuine interest in Silicon Valley, consumers, to experiment with products like this. And you saw that with the Pebble.
Excellent. So you guys want to?
I think I'd like to take on a little bit different tact. I think you need to pair the Pebble Kickstarter campaign with the Kittens and Lasers, the Kickstarter campaign. And what they both were, because that came out of the Oatmeal, which is another established company. And what those both are, in my mind, is a gigantic marketing tactic. Kickstarter is becoming a new place for your marketing team to work, where if you have excited people behind you, you can get a lot of free press and a lot of kind of excited people who you wouldn't normally be able to engage in so directly with to pre-buy your products. And I think it really kind of helps your brand, and it kind of becomes like this, it feels like a grassroots movement, which you don't normally get with a product launch.
Excellent.
Yeah, for us it was great. We ran a campaign on Indiegogo. We were successful, and I think even if large companies and corporations or established companies come in, it's still kind of an equalizer. It's a megaphone that we're able to use. We were in the New York Times in the first week after launching, and we got all sorts of contact from distributors, from consumers, and investors and dentists. So for a small company like us, it was great and very helpful, and I think we should all welcome even established companies to use this platform.
Did you get data from early consumers telling you how to shape your product, or no?
Yeah, we did. We got a lot of ideas, and we got messages from moms saying that thanking us for helping with the kids, and maybe we should make this type of game, or how can we get involved. So it's very helpful for us.
That's invaluable for a startup.
Totally. Yeah, guys, I want to open it to everybody. Please ask questions.
What was your Kickstarter target, and how much have you raised?
We set a low target, but we were actually on Indiegogo, so we raised over $60,000 on Indiegogo, and since then we've been using Celery on our website just to continue to take pre-orders, because as you get more and more press, people keep hearing about it. So after a while, we just watch the orders roll in.
This is for Shankar. So, how's your investment criteria differentiated from the other investment groups within Samsung, and not just for wearables? And maybe inside Samsung and outside Samsung, how do you
Sure.
choose your investments?
Sure. So overall, from the beginning of this year, January 1st, 2015, all the different groups, there were 3 different groups doing investments in Samsung. We're all one single team now. So for the outside world, it should be immaterial. There's one Samsung investment team, and it's primarily for investments in the US, Europe, and Israel. And we all make a common process to how to figure out what is interesting for Samsung. Everything we do is strategic, right? Which is we invest strategic. The fund is a tool to help get strategic benefit for Samsung. That's the right way to think about it. My focus, as different from other folks who are investing on behalf of Samsung, is early stage. Early stage core technology is what my team does. So it's not so much about hardware, software, etc. It is really core technology that could span everything, and it's around themes. Wearables is a theme. The Internet of Things is a theme, right? So digital health is a theme. So these are the areas we like, and we look at core technologies across those themes.
Thanks. Anybody in San Diego?
Yeah, I have a question. Shankar, regarding getting in touch with Samsung, I've tried to get in touch with Samsung. I have a digital healthcare company. Wanted to try to potentially leverage some of the wearable technology that Samsung has on an OEM basis, or potentially partner with Samsung on some of the technology that we're developing. And it's been very difficult to get a hold of anyone to get a response. How would you recommend going about doing that?
So thanks for that question. So here's the best way I would think about it. If it's a really early stage idea that is 1 or 2 years away from potentially engaging with a business unit, then the investment arm is probably the right team to look at you, which is perhaps help you mature to the point where you're ready to ship on a device or on a Samsung platform within the next 6 months or 8 months, right? So that's probably one way to do it, come through us. The other way is if you're actually ready and matured and you want to engage directly with a business unit, we could be the entry point for that, which is be a traffic cop. You don't need any investment, but if you're ready, we might be able to just refer to the right folks. If you want to send me a note later on, I'm happy to help.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah.
I had a follow-on question. I've seen Samsung as primarily being focused on consumer investments. Do you have any in the enterprise space, or are you shying away from that?
We're a really large company, as you know, right? So 200 billion in revenue, and we span across the spectrum. But I think the core of Samsung Electronics continues to be focused on consumer. We are a consumer company, we are a mobile company, and actually we are the world's second largest semiconductor company. I think those are the 3 things you can count on in this company, which is if it's focused on consumers, it's going to get a lot of traction, right? If it's enterprise, it begins to, we absolutely have to make our phones work in enterprises, right? It's a productivity device at the end of the day, and so we have a bunch of products that makes your productivity suite work really well. Containers that keep them secure, et cetera, et cetera. So really depends. You should reach out and give me more information so I could help you.
Certainly, thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Is any questions to other than Samsung for a change? It's all good.
I think you mentioned the magic word, funding, money.
Yeah, that's right.
23 deals.
All right. Yes.
Is there a special promising path for a small company that's a product that's just about ready to go to market and is patent protected in the U.S.? Is there a certain path to that?
You'll just repeat
Sorry.
the question.
Yeah.
A
What is the
you have
question?
a product that's near ready for market with working prototypes. You also have an issued U.S. patent, and it's a wearable, consumer-based, mass market, that kind of stuff. What's the most promising path through Samsung to do that?
It really depends. Again, I really think the rest of the folks should jump in here with ideas. But I think if Samsung sees a strategic benefit to engaging, either Samsung as your platform to go to market, or we are your technology gets on our device. We sell several hundred cell phones, 700 million cell phones a year. It's one of the world's largest platforms. So if the strategic benefit, perhaps that's the right way to think about it.
So is there a particular portal to submit the idea? Or?
It really depends if it's early stage disruptive ideas that require investment versus you directly want to work with a business unit.
We worked out all the prototype.
Well, can we take this follow-up?
Yes, we should take it offline.
Yeah. So there's a question that I wanted to ask all of you that I'm really curious to know, at least compare the notes. So if you guys want to learn what's happening in the wearable tech, who do you follow? Or where do you go? There's any particular resources that you like to read, or any particular bloggers that you like to follow? And the second question, what are the top 3 events throughout the year that you think, if you want to be in the wearable space, you just have to be in?
Okay, well, we're in the incubator Wearable World, so I would go to their website. They just acquired ReadWrite. It's wearableworld.co. And about the events, I think they're doing an event, Wearable World Congress, which is going to be at the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. So definitely check those guys out, or contact me and I can put you in touch.
All right.
I don't know. I'm following our customers, right? Things that Samsung is doing, other customers are doing. They are much closer to the consumer, and so that's number one. Number two, we are seeing how products get used and getting feedback from actual consumers, and that is helping our thinking. So any reporters in the room, I'm not following reporters or bloggers.
All right.
The only other, there's a IoT World event, I think, in May. That may be a pretty interesting one to go to. I think many consider wearables to be an internet of my thing, right? I don't really care what everybody else uses, but it's all about internet of my things, and I have a wearable. So wearable is a big piece of that, so that may be an interesting one to go to. I think it's in May 12th to 13th here in San Francisco, Moscone Center.
All right. Guys, we have probably time for a couple questions. Yes?
Are there any particular platforms which Qualcomm is or other guys are tilting towards in Internet of Things, like which makes all these things talk to each other, your toothbrush talking to your TV, or so is there a common platform which is emerging now? There was an article on Forbes which said that there's a space for a God platform which is going to emerge.
Yeah, so yes. So at Qualcomm, when we think about IoT or IoE, we think about devices on the body, that's wearable. Devices in and around the home, that's smart home. Devices out and about in the city, smart city, right? So home would be thermostats, LED lighting, appliances, those kind of things. City would be parking meter, security cameras, those kind of things. The glue across, there are 2 or 3 alternatives. Qualcomm, we are advocating, promoting, supporting the all join effort. All join basically acts as a glue across devices in these 3 ecosystems: body, home, city, right? It is connectivity agnostic. It is OS or software platform agnostic. It is obviously OEM product agnostic. The goal is for my watch to talk to my thermostat, to talk to my car, and so on.
Right.
But there are a couple of efforts underway. They are getting debated.
All right. Any other thoughts on the platforms?
Yeah, there's the All-Seeing Alliance. There's a few platforms. I think that it's kind of early days for the standard setting, and maybe it's a bit different than other standard development organizations because there's a lot of data involved. So I think that the process is more drawn out for that reason.
I think you're gonna have to see the vertical integrations rise first. Like I think to try to set standards at this point is way too early. And I think you're gonna have to see something like HealthKit or SAMI really work in the health space and whatever's in the connected home space, the equivalent arise before you can say, oh, now I understand how all these things can talk to each other. So I'd look at the verticals first and then see where that leads to.
And what do you think, so can I continue with a follow-up question? Okay.
Sure.
What do you think the driving factors would be in which platform gets eventually selected as the general platform for all these devices?
You know, we've been talking about IoE and IoT for 5 years, 10 years, because it's Internet of Everything, right? But maybe last couple of years, things are actually becoming smarter. Personally, I think it is very difficult to do standards for everything, right? But you know, there used to be DLNA a long time ago, right? So if we can kind of focus on 2 or 3 or 4 use cases, then you can have standards around it.
I just have one comment on that. I think separate from the connectivity, the policy around the data itself is going to be a really important piece. I think we all live in the Valley and we all share a lot, and you ask for the Twitter handles so you can let everybody know. I think that's a big piece of the world we live in today. But I think, do I really want to share my personal data that I'm measuring on my body with anybody out there, right? Or if I do share that, what if I want it back? Am I going to get it back, right? So I think there are some fundamental questions here, and I think really depending on which vertical you talk about, beyond the connectivity, the policy around the data is going to determine which platform may actually may proliferate.
Right.
If it's Internet of My Things, I want it to be my data, and I want to keep my data. I want it back, right?
Okay.
I think also for whoever has the first really successful devices, the really successful mass market devices that are consumed by a significant portion of the population, they'll have a big say in whatever that's going to look like.
Right, yeah, I think, yeah.
All right.
I just have a quick question for both Shankar as well as Pankaj about healthcare. So in terms of, you talked about, consumer, mass consumer adoption being really important, but what about working with employers or payers? Do you see that as an important part of driving sort of the market or not? With the health strategy or with...
Yeah, so if you look at the sheer amount of money that could be made in taking healthcare from here to there,
or saved,
right? So it's a good opportunity to look at, but it brings nuances and FDA and so on. So we are looking at it. We created a separate business, Qualcomm Life. The legal issues are different. The business model is different. How you deal with FDA is different. One of the products Qualcomm Life we have is basically, we can have sensors on our body, but how do you transmit that data to your doctors and hospitals and get around the privacy issue? So there is a product, it's called 2Net, but basically it has a modem, and you give permission to share your data, your sensor data, with your doctor. We are running a trial with 100-some hospitals.
2Net, TWO.
2Net. If you search for Qualcomm Life, you'll find it.
Okay.
But the idea is maybe going back to how the data get used. If you think about it in the nursing home context, how often does a person move with the person, diabetes and those kind of things. So 2Net is basically transmitting the data real time, building out the history, and then the doctor has access to that data, and they can do something about it. It is FDA approved and so on. Yeah, the technology is the same. The same four things matter: power, size, sensors, connectivity. It's the regulation around it.
Yeah.
Anybody else wants to comment?
Well, Anthem is actually one of our investors because they're very interested in kind of this space, and I think in their mind they envision kind of they've told us straight up that their doctors do not want the data, not in its rawest form. What they really are interested in is essentially building concentric circles around your doctor, where your doctor is at the center and you talk to them once or twice a year. And there's a circle around that with more medical professionals who you talk to 5 to 15 times a year. And there's a circle around that of people who you interact with much more frequently. And that at each level, the data gets less specific as it comes toward the middle, where it's being condensed down to just actionable steps rather than we've talked to doctors, they straight up say, I don't care how many steps you took last week. I really just don't. And they've given us the analogy of you don't want to get the data out of an EKG. You would never want me to give that to you because what are you going to do with that? What you want is me to turn around and say, you're healthy or you're not healthy and these are the steps we're going to take. And they've told us they want the same kind of filtering process to happen upstream from them as it moves down through the healthcare channel.
Here's the only other side comment here. Remember the years when we all used to use Blackberries issued by our workplace?
Yeah.
Not anymore, right?
Yeah.
They bring your own device and connect into your LAN and get all the functionality and more. So I think, why did that happen? You know, when that started happening and people started bringing them in, the IT and every one of these companies tried to shut them down. They did not allow it, but consumers demanded it because they saw the productivity and value behind it. I think, to your point, I think eventually the ecosystem changes. I think healthcare providers and employers, etc., they all begin to change because consumers demand change. They want to take control of this on their own, but this is going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
I think that's what you want to look at over time, which is not just the existing infrastructure that matters, but how the existing infrastructure is going to evolve over time because of changes in consumer demand and what they're going to do with it.
And taking time is for good reason, right?
Yeah.
99% reliability is not good enough,
Yeah.
right? So the accuracy of heart rate monitors and ECG sensors,
Yeah, the maturation.
it's not there yet. It needs to be 5 nines or something. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
Ethan, you have any comments?
No, not on this. Well, I think for what we're doing with the Grush, we want to integrate into this whole ecosystem of data there. I think a lot of the times people, when they're talking about wearables, they're just talking about running, swimming, or jumping out of planes. But I think when people want to take a look at their life and they want to see this sort of holistic view, and I think it's important to think about not just simple rotations of the wrist, but other data sources.
All right. So I think we have time for a last question from San Diego.
Thank you for taking my question. So I just wanted to get from every panelist, if it's possible, their views going forward with the security or concerns of people, if there are any, and where will it lead in the sharing of data? When do they see the consumers typically maybe willing to share more information downstream, 5 years, 10 years from now, or are we still going to build up some kind of a security buffer or whatever around this? How do they see it?
All right, let me take this again. This may be controversial, so it's really my personal view, right? So I think we all live in the post-Snowden era, right? So what does that mean? There's really no secrets anymore. If it's data, then probably someone's snooping on it, right? So now, now we're beginning to talk about some really important piece of data that's deeply personal, right? And I think consumer perception can change on a dime. And I think going from sharing everything to keeping certain things incredibly private and secure and encrypted is not that far. I'm willing to bet on some fundamental change like that coming up really, really soon. Right? Why throw everything up on the cloud when my smartphone can have everything that I need to have in there? period, right? So I think the infrastructure is there. I think consumer perception will change pretty quickly. I think we'll still share a certain type of stuff, but there are other things where there's no way in hell I'm going to share, right? So that's the way it's going to be, and I think it's not that far. It's not 5 years. It's probably a year or two from now, my view.
Well, for us, we definitely secured the brush, so this is a secure toothbrush. There's all sorts of rules when you're dealing with data and kids. There's COPA compliance and all that, so we have a secure channel to the cloud.
That's funny. You know, it comes down to cost and benefit, right? I'm willing to share things I share on Facebook because the benefit it has given me, connecting with friends I went to school with, is greater than the cost I pay putting my life out there. You know, the wealth management websites, Betterment and Wealthfront and so on. 3 years ago, you could not imagine dealing with, you know, internet to put your money. Today, everybody is doing it in Silicon Valley because the benefit is greater than the cost. So, of course, 5 years is a century in Silicon Valley, right? Things will change much faster.
I think from, and again, this is again my own opinion, that from a hardware perspective and from an OS perspective, the Apples and the Samsungs of the world are going to be very interested in it. From a consumer perspective, I mean, we have people sharing everything on every social network imaginable. There's no reason to believe that if there was a compelling consumer reason for people to share this data, they wouldn't. I mean, people are pretty shameless these days, and I just think that if there was a good reason and if you felt like you were getting enough value out of it, that people will share it. And I do think there will be an increased, now that there's increased awareness though, you will see the OS and hardware vendors put more of a focus on secure it if you want it secure. But that's not going to change consumer behavior.
All right.
I know we're out of time, but can I ask a real quick question? Sorry.
Sure.
So I'm like looking fast forward 10, 20 years ahead or whatever it is. Everyone has 20,000 wearables and everything's talking to everybody and everything's beeping and what have you. Isn't there a point where it just gets too much? And how do we, as we're building this, what are your, I mean, I know it's too early to ask these questions, but what do you think? What is that going to look like in terms of where sort of the plateau and
how much time do we have?
Could you paraphrase the question just for the folks there?
To paraphrase the question is, in some time we're going to have so many wearable devices, and this is going to completely overwhelm us, beeping with reminders, with whatnot, and everything. How are we going to deal with all that? Is that correct?
Yeah.
I think we're there today. Pankaj asked the question, how many of you guys wear wearables, right? And I think we saw a bunch raise hands. I can tell you, let me ask again, how many of you have 4 or 5 wearables that you put away that you don't wear anymore? That you don't wear anymore on your drawer? I've got 7 that I don't wear anymore, right? So unless these are highly compelling and it makes a fundamental difference to you, they don't last more than a couple of weeks. So I think that's where it goes to. I think it's going to have to get compelling, and I think it happens when real use cases get traction, and it's going to take some time. And I think you will continue to wear the ones that are incredibly useful to you.
So about the beeping and buzzing, I think there needs to be a little bit more smart kind of learning about what notifications that we can accept on these wearable devices. For me, there's some emails I can get on my laptop that I just don't want it to buzz on my watch. So I think if they can sort of learn what I really want to see here, that would be very helpful.
You know, it goes back to cost benefit. If I kind of expand your question, all of these things will be connected. You always, or one always has a choice. You don't have to buy these devices. People who buy are implicitly saying, I value the benefit. I'm willing to pay for it. And the user experience will change over time.
I think the idea that there's going to be 20,000 or lots of them is just, I think that's where the incorrect assumption is. I think that initially in all these hardware cycles, they're very, very specialized, but they inevitably tend toward a more generic solution. I think you're going to see that boom bust happen over and over, but you're never going to end up with zillions of these. They're going to always come back to a few simple devices that add value to your life.
All right, I think that's a great point to finish the discussion tonight. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you for all the questions and for coming here tonight. And we're going to have a lot more events in the future. Please stay tuned.
And for you folks, if you have any suggestions, with respect to meetups, how to make them better, content you want to see in San Diego, in Silicon Valley, please, shoot me an email at Silicon Valley Startup Entrepreneurs, San Diego Startup Entrepreneurs. We want to provide really relevant content. And thank you really for coming tonight, everybody. I'm sure there's things that you'd rather be doing, but I think this was really very valuable. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.